Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
Nobody knows how to pilot this ship.
We'll need a local image translator to see what's out there.
Or we could just look out through the door.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Diana.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Riley. And that is for mathematical excellence.
This episode, we're heading to Gallifrey. Or are we? Regardless of where we end up, we're going to get science-y in full circle. But before we get into that, Riley's going to take a look at the mail.
Thank you, Anthony. I have a little bit of mail from our Season 17 retrospective episode. First up is Guy Lambert, who says, "Great Sunday morning listening. I think you're right. Sometimes an analysis of ropey Doctor Who is more fun than just saying, that was good. 10 letters from Dudley Simpson's bank manager asking how he intends to pay the mortgage now out of 10.
He still had Blake 7 going, so he was fine.
Keith Burton says, "This was the first season of Doctor Who I watched as a fan. Looking at it through the lens of 2024, it's far from perfect and sometimes struggles to escape production limitations. But it was written, recorded, and broadcast to a huge audience of excited young children who absolutely adored it at the time. And we kind of still love it today. 9 weaklings scum out of 10. And now we have a couple that decided to give a ranking of the serials of that season. First up is Nathan Laws, who says, "And so we begin to see the dichotomy between the fans who feel that JNT initially revitalized Doctor Who and only ruined it later, and those who feel like he ruined it from the beginning. I have a more nuanced view, but we'll get to that when you get there. Because it's fun, my own particular ranking is number 1, City of Death. Number 2, Shada. Number 3, Destiny of the Daleks. Number 4, Nightmare of Eden. Number 5, Creature from the Pit. Number 6, Horns of Nimon."
How dare you, sir? Soldeed elevates that story.
From the gutter. Mark Dunstan says, "All I can say this season was lucky 17. ITV was on strike and gave the season a great boost in viewers. 2 great stories plus 1 unfinished, 1 really awful. Agree with Anthony, episode 1 of Destiny is fantastic with no music. It was very good, but that's only episode 1, unfortunately." And Mark's rankings go as such. Number 1, City of Death. Number 2, Nightmare of Eden. Number 3, Shada. Number 4, Horns of Nimon. There we go, Soldeed. Number 5, episode 1, only episode 1 of Destiny. And then number 6, Creature from the Pit and the rest of Destiny.
This is the correct ranking.
And I mentioned it was just a few. We're going to wrap up with Ben Flay, who says, quote, "Oh, rough season, and it's about to get worse." All right, that's the mail. Back to you.
Thank you for that, Riley. And as a reminder to everyone, we really do love getting your feedback, thoughts, comments, and questions. And as you've just heard, we do try to read out as many as possible on the show. So please do get in touch. As always, you can contact us through Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, or you can email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. Additionally, we would absolutely love it if you subscribe to the podcast, if you're not doing so already, and if you dropped us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting platform. Both of those things really do help the show. Now, heading behind the scenes on Full Circle. As new script editor Christopher H. Bidmead was reviewing the files in the production office, fueled by his desire for new script writers, he found a storyline called The Planet That Slept. It was written by Andrew Smith, who had been encouraged to submit material to the show by several of Bidmead's predecessors. As Smith had never written for the show before, Bidmead invited him to a meeting to discuss developing the storyline into a more suitable form. What Bidmead did not expect, however, was that Smith was an 18-year-old Doctor Who fan with no prior scriptwriting experience. In his original outline, the TARDIS arrived on the planet Alzarius, where Neanderthal-like marshmen rose from the swamps during the time of Mistfall. As the Doctor and Romana explored, a space freighter crash-landed on the planet, and they tried to help its crew repair the ship while fending off the marshmen and gigantic cave-dwelling spiders. They were helped by a young marsh child who was rejected by the rest of her kind due to her pacifist nature. In the end, the marsh child sacrificed herself to keep the Doctor and Romana safe until the mists vanished and the marshmen retreated to the swamps. Bidmead was impressed with the striking images that Smith conjured in his storyline and decided to help him refine it. Bidmead wanted to give Doctor Who a much stronger scientific underpinning, and so he and Smith decided to make evolution an underlying theme of the story. The Marshmen, the spiders, which were no longer giant since the production team was wary that they would be too difficult to actually create, and even the ship's crew would all represent different evolutionary stages of the same species. The space freighter became a passenger liner which had crash-landed on Alzarius centuries earlier. Smith was also tasked with integrating elements of a story arc that had been conceived by Bidmead, of which The Planet That Slept would be the first in a trilogy. It had been developed at the suggestion of Doctor Who superfan cum advisor Ian Levine, who recalled the tighter continuity between stories which had been seen in the 1960s. For his part, Bidmead wanted to impart more meaning to the Doctor's seemingly aimless wandering. Nathan Turner was less keen on this idea, having seen firsthand the difficulties that an overarching plot had imposed on season 16, when every story involved the search for a segment of the key to time. However, he ultimately agreed to Bidmead's notion of a shorter story arc in which the TARDIS became trapped in an antimatter universe. One of Smith's biggest tasks was to introduce a new companion called Adric, devised by Nathan Turner as part of a plan to introduce a more relatable and less invincible-seeming set of companions. The character had already been written into State of Decay, which would be recorded before Adric's debut, but broadcast after. It was decided that Adric would take over some of the Marshchild's role from the original storyline, and Smith also had to incorporate Adric's brother, whom was initially called Afrus, but was eventually renamed to Vash. By late February of 1980, Bidmead commissioned Smith to write the first episode of The Planet That Slept. Satisfied with the result, he requested the final 3 installments at the end of March. It was now known that Smith's adventure would be the 4th story into production, but the 3rd to be screened. During the script's development, a power struggle amongst the Outlaws between Vash and Tylos was eliminated, while a Marshchild character was reintroduced, replacing a more mature Marsh woman. Lexeter became renamed as Dexeter, and this was apparently done to avoid confusion with the character of Lexa in Meglos, the previous story. Nathan Turner introduced the notion of Alzarius' coordinates being the negative of Gallifrey's and the Gallifreyan wilds appearing on the TARDIS scanner. And for a time, the planet was referred to as Yerfilag.
Excuse me?
Yerfilag. Gallifrey spelled backwards.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. To help him understand Adric, Smith developed a detailed backstory which didn't actually make it into the story, or any of Doctor Who ever. To explain Adric's distrust of the Deciders, Smith decided that Adric had discovered his parents' seemingly accidental death aboard the Starliner had actually been contrived by Draith in order to encourage a more conservative attitude amongst the Pterodonians towards the possibility of embarkation.
So kind of like Spider-Man.
Kind of like poor Adric. Poor Adric. Bidmead's story arc was detailed in a document issued in mid-June 1980. It explained that the TARDIS would pass through a charged vacuum emboitment, a region of space-time in which the interaction between matter and antimatter particles and strong electromagnetic fields had created the doorway to a number of tiny subsidiary universes. Instead of an antimatter universe as originally proposed, the Doctor and Romana would now become trapped in one of these exospace-time continuums, dubbed E-space, while the normal universe was N-space, I assume for normal space. Because E-space would be small, containing just 2 galaxies, the Doctor would have an unprecedented ability to steer the TARDIS. In addition to providing the background for the 3 E-space stories, Bidmead planned that these details would also presage elements of the season finale, so more to come. At around the same time, Bidmead also renamed Smith's serial to Full Circle to address Nathan Turner's unhappiness with the original title. The assigned director was Peter Grimwade, who had previously worked on Doctor Who as a production assistant, dating all the way back to Season 7's Spearhead from Space. Like several of the other directors from this season, he had gotten to know Nathan Turner when they worked together on All Creatures Great and Small, and we'll be hearing a lot more about that show as we move along. Grimwade was also a writer and had been working on a Doctor Who storyline for several months, which would ultimately become next season's Time Flight. Joining Grimwade's key behind-the-scenes team, we have Angela Smith continuing her run as production unit manager. Amy Roberts returns to the show as costumer, having previously worked on Season 15's Image of the Fendal, and we also have the return of composer Paddy Kingsland. Making the first of 2 contributions to the show, we have Janet Budden as designer, and outside of Doctor Who, she also worked on the infamous Z-Cars, which we haven't heard about in a while, Allo Allo, and Grange Hill. Now, while this is the first appearance of Adric, we will actually cover his casting next episode, as State of Decay was made before this one, and he was cast as part of the production of that story. So you'll hear a bit more about Matthew Waterhouse next time. Meanwhile, around the time that Full Circle was in production, it became clear that Tom Baker would not be returning to Doctor Who for an 8th season. Baker was already the longest-serving Doctor by 2 years and was becoming visibly tired of the job. He had also grown to dislike several of the changes that Nathan Turner had made to the series, and he did not get along well with Matthew Waterhouse.
Sorry, I'm just imagining how that must have gone.
God,
Also, Matthew Waterhouse is tiny.
Yeah, he was 19.
Well, no, just like
It's also
short,
a small man,
tiny. Yeah.
As we've mentioned many times before, Baker had hinted about leaving Doctor Who several times in recent years, but it was now clear that both the actor and the production team saw eye to eye on the situation. They both wanted him gone. The final straw came when Nathan Turner told Tom Baker that he would not be in line for a pay rise for season 19. Baker's departure would be announced to the general public on October the 24th, 1980, the day before the debut episode of Full Circle was broadcast. And the serial was broadcast as usual on consecutive Saturdays between October the 25th and November the 15th, 1980. So before we discuss the story, the short summary for the very first time is with Diana. Over to you, Diana.
After hopping on over to eSpace, our delightfully matchy-matchy TARDIS team explore a world where the TARDIS does what it's programmed to do and is populated by creatures from the Black Lagoon who are apparently symbiotic with the local spiders, who harness body-swapping powers and are born from melons? Oh, who cares? It's Adric! Adric.
Okay. Julie, where are you coming down on this Adric thing?
From this first story, I'm not going to say I'm a big fan, but I'm not a hater.
Okay.
Look, here's what I'll say. It's justified, my love, but also I think the thing that I wrote most about him in my notes was poor Adric, so I get it.
All right.
We'll get to Adric. We will get there. So we start off and we're supposedly heading to Gallifrey. And Riley, I have to ask, how glad are you that we did not end up on Gallifrey?
Well, it's funny you mention that because about halfway through this first episode, I wrote down that there's a John Carradine looking guy chasing a child due to everyone in this culture being obsessed with melons. I don't know, guys. Gallifrey doesn't look too bad about it now. So that's how I feel about Gallifrey. You know, it balances out. I'm not that harsh on this serial. Just lay my cards on the table. Could it have been worse going to Gallifrey? Absolutely. Could it have been better? Also, probably.
No, Adric doesn't live on Gallifrey.
Do not push me.
Well, okay. I'll get to the story, all right, guys? You want to go do that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so they want to go to Gallifrey. And what does Romana do? She goes and sulks in her room like a 5-year-old.
I am happy that we got to see her room. I never thought we would ever see her room. And I expected more of a variety of costumes. Like she has,
well, it didn't show her closet. It showed her room.
Yeah, I guess. I was kind of hoping to see in the background an open closet where there's like a ringmaster uniform, a schoolgirl uniform, all the different wardrobes she's worn that make it look like she has a different occupation. That's what I was hoping to see.
I enjoyed the fact that it looked like on the other side of the room there should be a door that opens into the Golden Girls house.
Oh, God,
it was
you're right.
such a Miami Golden Girls vibe. I was into it, although very doesn't strike me as Romana, but that's okay.
Did anyone else notice that the walls in her room, they were a slight shade of pink versus the walls outside of her room?
They're like the Golden Girls pink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the fact that we got a sassy K9, even though we only got him for a brief period of time.
Right. Before beheading.
They have been doing him dirty, and I'm very upset about it.
It seems so very clear after that behind the scenes that Anthony gave that the writers have been encouraged by the crew to put that poor little robot dog through hell.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Just soak it in water, cut off its head, do this, do that.
Use it as a club. My heart.
So sad.
Yeah. But we're not quite there yet. That doesn't happen until episode 2.
Right. But we have a break because don't we suddenly jump to our planet that may be Gallifrey, maybe not be Gallifrey? We don't know yet.
In which we see men swimming who I was like, oh, are they naked?
I saw butts.
And then they got out and I'm like, well, those pants aren't doing them any good. Those are secret.
Those counted as butts.
Well,
yeah.
These 2 lads swimming in their alien flesh-colored Speedos. There is nothing homoerotic here whatsoever. Nothing to see here. Let's move on.
Well, what's interesting is that, are you guys talking about the beginning or at the end when they get scared by Mistfall and as they're like running out of the water? I never thought I would see a thong worn in Doctor Who, but this apparently is a serial first.
Yeah, all of the above. I counted 3 butts.
New metric, the butt count.
I don't know if it will go past here because I was pretty surprised to see some butts, but
well, I want to know, like, now that we are on the planet, we've had our butts, we've had our obsession with melons and children. Someone will need to explain this to me later, why the children of the group, I guess because they want to be outside of the group and not go onto the Starliner, so they're stealing fruit to store for food later. I guess that's their plan. It seems like they're just kind of stealing from themselves just to give back to themselves. Anyway, I want to know Julie's opinion about the music.
I have a love-hate relationship with the music throughout this entire serial. Mm-hmm. There are times when I think it is fantastic, and then there's times where I'm like, this was a choice. I'm not sure why this was the choice, but this was the choice. That
little triumphant theme they give to K9 is so out of place with the rest of it, and at times ruins the mood.
And in part 1, now this may be too deep cut of a reference here, but are we sure that the music for this wasn't done by Zamfir, master of the pan flute? Because it really, really had strong vibes of that, if anyone knows what I'm talking about.
Nope.
No one was a child of the 80s of watching commercials selling his CDs or 90s.
I, in fact, was not a child of the 80s. So yes, you're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
Listeners, write in. Support me on this. I'm not old.
Yeah, sorry, Riley. In bringing on our new watcher, we didn't choose someone roughly the same age as you. We chose someone who's more mine and Julie's age.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's pretty lonely.
Okay, we have these group of outliers, and Adric comes along, and he wants to join them. Okay, adorable, but apparently he is too elitist and too smart for it, and they judge him on his badge for the mathematical excellence. What is happening right now?
He's pretty pleased about that badge.
He's so pleased.
All I gotta say is that nerd.
But he's so cute. He's so earnest.
You know who else was earnest? Scrappy Doo. Scrappy Doo was earnest.
And look, Scrappy Doo.
Scrappy Doo. Oh no, I am not a Scrappy Doo fan.
I'm not either, and I'm having trouble because I'm seeing a very strong comparison. And I don't like Scrappy Doo.
You cannot deny it.
But my love for Adric runs deep enough that I will be apologetic in ways that I understand are based in fallacy. But it's the fact that he's come from this very naive background. Like, he has purposely been undereducated for all that he can do math real good. And he just wants to do what's right. And I think that one of the things that I enjoy in his scrappy do-ness, I guess, is the fact that he always makes pretty bad mistakes, but he realizes it as he does it. And he does such a good job of having that just, fuck, Adric again. Did we do this again? He just is one of those bad luck people. And I enjoy his mishaps because he's young and he's dumb. I find him entertaining.
So your love of Adric is not because he's competent or a great companion, but because Okay. All right, cool.
And in defense of that badge for mathematical excellence, at some point during his tenure on the show, and Diana will know exactly when it is, because it's a pretty big moment, at some point that will actually have a very practical use.
Better be earned. That's all I'm
it's
saying.
Earned.
All
it's
right.
earned.
All right.
And I think that it works because it gives him just enough to be a little mathy. He can have some of those conversations, but he's also naive and dumb because all he knows is math.
And to be honest, as a kid, I loved Adric because I saw someone who was only 10 years older than me who was traveling with the Doctor. As a young Doctor Who fan, he's awesome. As a 30-something, 40-something Doctor Who fan, it's like, fucking Adric.
But I challenge you to hang out with any precocious 16-year-old and not feel like, teenager.
I know.
I mean, that's how I felt about Susan, who is apparently supposed to be a teenager, yet a Time Lord. So, like, was she really a teenager? And I get a little bit confused on that timey-wiminess, but, it's fine.
In Earth years, Susan is actually 40.
Okay.
All right. Moving on.
I also want to mention one other costume thing before we go any further.
Okay. Because I was going to talk design, so let's do costumes and then design.
Okay. I want to talk how we're continuing our comforter era in costuming.
I noticed that too.
Oh, right.
Because the deciders definitely, they're using some blankets to create those costumes.
Everybody else is wearing yoga retreat outfits with their toms. And then here comes Quilted Northern.
They work hard and they sleep hard.
Again, as a kid, it was great because I could wrap a comforter around myself and be like, I'm on Doctor Who. All right, I really like the design in this story. If you look around the Starliner, there are all these little geometric shapes around, and all of the corridors are very kind of harsh angles. There are very few rounded edges. And I don't know, it just gives this impression of this culture having a huge emphasis on math, which I really like. And then I actually think the sets for the caves are really well done as well. So I like the design work here a lot. It works really well for me.
I like how you mentioned it being all mathematical, and then you come to find out that they weren't from that place. So they became mathematical just because this thing was sitting there being mathematical.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
By the way, I think those corridor sets are 100% borrowed from Blake 7.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're redressed a bit, but they really do look like it. It's pretty cool. They're sharing sets now.
One day I'll watch Blake 7.
Yeah. One day the Blake 7 podcast will come.
Within the Watchers Podcast Network.
Along with the Julie and Diana Outlander Hour.
Oh, that's got a nice ring to it.
Really does, doesn't it?
The double Jamie Power Hour.
Oh, what have we done?
Yes.
All right, let's talk about Mistfall. Mistfall is coming, much like winter.
Which sounds like a D&D expansion pack.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. To this time, a branch of new characters that all live in the swamp.
We had everyone carrying around a D12 last story, so this time we have the expansion pack.
And now Mistfall, what does it do? It forces men out of pools of water wearing thongs, and it causes people to run to their nearest starship.
I actually really like the design of the Marshmen.
They were so cute.
Oh, you mean our so-called monsters? Oh, I love that shot. You know what that actually reminded me of?
Creature from the Black Lagoon?
No, I mean, yes, but also it reminded me of, and Anthony, you might not remember this because I forced you to watch this with me at my place one time, the 1980s British fantasy film Kroll. Sci-fi fantasy film. And there's a scene where from the distance that you saw these creatures, the henchmen kind of raised out of a swamp. Looked a lot better because they were obviously on a studio set in the film and like were raised on platforms as like mechanical. This was literally some poor actors in costumes climbing out of that slop and then having to then continue to step in mud in that. I feel so bad for them. I really do.
That movie was 3 years after this. I do wonder if maybe there was some inspiration.
Maybe. But they are wonderful. Let's move on to our sweet little Adric being guilty of manslaughter.
Yeah.
He sure was. Poor Adric.
And not like Leela with her shooting people with Janus thorns, but just oops, I didn't mean to do that.
It's a little dramatic. I mean, I doubt that Adric actually has the strength to... I don't know. Draith is pretty old.
Well, all I know is that thank God Draith said full circle when he died, because the cereal could have easily been called...
That has quite the ring to it.
It does. It does.
How do you spell that?
I think it's a lot of P's, F's, and TH's repeated over and over.
I got an L in there somewhere, I think.
Maybe.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, he's dead. And now Adric, does he have, in his little scrappy-doo heart, does he have any teensy bit of remorse there? He just seems to run straight off to the TARDIS.
He's also scared of the mist that he has been indoctrinated into believing will kill him. And so I imagine he's caught in the middle of, shit, I'm 16. I may have just killed the only guy that knows anything. And the mist is coming. And And so I just don't think he has time to feel sad.
It's now in my head that Adric, this entire story, is just having a complete blackout.
100%. Are you kidding? I think that's a consistent state for Adric, I'm going to say. He's just always kind of in a mild state of panic. The only thing I understand is calculus.
Yeah. And by the time he makes it into the TARDIS, Romana basically has no time for him. She is like, who are you? Why are you here? Get the fuck out.
It's so good. We're in part 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the cliffhanger was the Marshmen rising out of the swamp, and part 2 is starting with them acclimatizing.
So I just wanted to point out, what I've seen as a trend recently is that the first episode is usually a full-length episode, but a lot of the middle parts have been a bit short and have recaps that are kind of pushing it. So,
well, in this case, I would say Andrew Smith was only 18. Let's give him some slack.
Oh, yeah, I'm not blaming the writer. I'm partially blaming, there's some other things that can be done. But I just find it interesting if this is going to be a trend, because it happened in Meglos. So,
Yeah.
Well, next time round, it's Terrence Dix. So we'll see how that one does.
Oh, well, Okay, yeah, I do love Romana. And then Romana gets held hostage, but not really held hostage in her own TARDIS.
Yeah, because Adric brings his buddies and his brother in.
Which was another mistake.
Strike 3!
Yeah. Look, I've never said he made good decisions. I just like him.
True.
So strike 3 in part 2?
Yeah. Okay. That sounds about right. Part of what I like about Adric is there was the moment in the early part where they're trying to decide, why is the visualizer still showing Gallifrey, and did they move? What happened? And everybody's like, oh, we could figure this out. And Adric's like, or we could just look out the door. And it's so aproposly Adric, because it's a scene ender. There's no yes and, there is no contribution to the scene. It is scene over. But we could just look out and he's right. He's right. It's just not what you want to hear.
But when they do look out the door, the Marshmen are advancing on the TARDIS. It's like, whoops.
Poor Adric.
He's so smarmy when he suggests this as well.
He always thinks he's right.
Yeah. I want to talk about the structure of this society. So there are basically 3 guys, the deciders, who rule, and only one of them gets to know everything.
It's so dumb.
This does seem like a pretty shitty way to run a society.
Yeah, it ain't great.
That's a red flag.
Yeah.
I also love that we meet the deciders, we meet the outliers, but we never really meet any normal people.
Yeah, the everyday people in the society. Are they happy?
We saw them swimming in their see-through shorts. I guess they're doing all right.
Maybe they're not on the outside. They're not the deciders. They just live in a life of leisure, I guess, eating spider fruit and wearing thongs.
It is quite odd that the only thing I've seen of normal people are their butts.
Yeah.
And occasionally them fixing things, but mostly butts.
Right. And speaking of the deciders, I don't know if the rest of you have closed captions on while watching.
Always.
But, dude, that guy's name is not Logan. His name is Logan. All right?
Logan, yeah.
No, it's Logan.
It is Logan.
It's Logan. It's absolutely Logan. They found it in the manual somewhere. And so someone named
my
him
God.
Login.
Oh my god, yeah.
Turns out that the rest of the scenes, the reason they didn't use him is like, is save file too obvious?
I love it.
You're welcome, everybody.
That's good. I love that.
Oh,
Hey.
boy.
I have a question. Okay, I know, Anthony, you mentioned that you really liked the design and everything. What's the deal with the doorbell on a spaceship?
I love that, yeah.
Why not? You know, they might have people popping around for tea sometime.
I feel like maybe it's to really drive into story is, you know, it's apparently been there for a couple thousand generations. So it's really just been a big house. I guess you have a doorbell in your house. Nobody ever planned actually to fly that thing until the last 7 minutes.
I think it's set up just for the convenience of when they're flying in it, that the Vern or the Wern from Ark in Space can just knock on the door, ring the doorbell like, hey, let us in. Just let us in. No biggie. Just a little stay for a while.
Yeah, please. You know you want to. Yeah, that is questionable. But I do love the angular shapes of the whole thing, even if the doorbell is a bit weird.
Yeah, they should have no solicitors.
Not even on a proper plaque, but on like a little post-it note that's written on a Sharpie, like the one on my front door.
Yeah. Well, let's sort this out where we are plot-wise, because Romana and the Doctor, for most of the serial, seem kind of split, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
Which is disappointing, but based on Anthony's behind the scenes, also understandable, so things are kind of stressed. And I want to focus on the kids with Romana situation, because we have the whole holding her at knife point, not cool. And then with her plot line, as it continues through part 2, we have, of course, as you mentioned before, opening the doors, there's the Marshmen, and then the Marshmen back away because of the fruit, but we find out the fruit are filled with spiders. And the thing that kind of gets me here is that these kids, up to this point, have hijacked the TARDIS, put her at knife point, and now they've abandoned her. Are they just completely shit, or is that just me?
No, they are absolute pieces of shit.
Oh my God.
Most teenagers are.
Yeah, that's
They were
true.
giving me very like Lord of the Flies. You send enough teenagers to be by themselves and they're going to turn into violent little rascals.
The other little Lord of the Flies reference I thought was when K9's head is being used to ward off the Marshmen. I don't know, something about that felt...
Ooh,
yeah, very tribal. Yeah.
Yeah, the pig head.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't connect to that.
Yeah.
The other thing I like is when the Doctor runs into that Marsh child and the Marsh child runs away. He says something like, how strange, I normally get on so well with children.
No, you don't.
In parallel, Romana really does not.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Okay. I have a question about these spiders.
Oh, yeah. Fair
Okay.
enough.
Well, okay. More questions, but one just main statement. Why do they keep using the I'm running away type of noise with the spiders, but they don't move? So it's using all the like, little scrambly, like, oh, I'm going to just like rat noises, but I'm just going to sit here. I don't like the spiders. They're very poorly realized.
And think about it, they originally wanted to make them giant.
Yeah, that wouldn't have worked.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I like the concept, but they're not well done.
No.
And I didn't ever understand. So, grand total story, like whatever, they're all the same species. So, why were they afraid of the spiders?
It seems like there's only 2 species on this planet. The marsh people that they evolved from and the marsh spiders. That's pretty much it.
And even the spiders and the Marshmen are the same.
Are the same genetic the same.
Yeah, all 3 are in the same genetic line. And throughout the entire thing, they all despise the other. And at the end, no peace is made.
No. And how did the spider body swap Romana?
The Doctor mentions that. He talks about how effectively the bite passed a protein into her blood that affected her brain and postulates that it would only be a short-term effect anyway.
Okay.
It's hidden in dialogue, I want to say, sometime in part 3. Yeah. Honestly, it's taken me 20 years to pick up on that. So, you know.
Oh, boy.
And I really like this story. So I've seen this one quite a few times, and literally this was the first time I picked up on the explanation.
Right. Well, that was Romana's plot line. Have we gotten to the point now where the Doctor starts to unveil also how shitty the Deciders are?
Yeah.
I particularly liked the scene where the well-rehearsed lighting cues of each
Yes.
decider.
Oh, that was hilarious.
I had this moment of just, pause the show and just kind of have like a imagining of just imagining the deciders themselves, rehearsing that. I'm going to stand up first. Lighting guy that's up there that apparently just lives up in the rafters. This is when you do it. Yes, we're going to sit in the dark until the next person walks in the room. Okay. So let's do this. Let's all sit, just the whole thing of it all to be able to do it. It was entertaining
I love
for me.
That.
I agree with you, Diana, because it is so clearly rehearsed. They've got the stage lighting, but who are they doing it for? Everyone on the Starliner knows who they are.
So it's good.
And then they don't expect any visitors. They are shook when the Doctor and Romana show up. So who are they rehearsing this for?
I mean, the whole thing is just a big play. I love that was written into the show, like really like leans into that whole thing where it's so scripted, everything within the ship, that they're even doing that for just the next person that walks in. That's who they were doing it for. Whoever it was. Maintenance.
I'm imagining if it had been maintenance. Yes, we know who you are.
Yeah.
Just a guy in there with a mop, the janitor. Like, oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
It's
All right.
3:05. It's time to mop the Grand Hall. According to the manual.
According to the manual, oh boy.
I do love the line the Doctor has when he's talking. He says, "Why can't people be nice to each other? Just for a change. I mean, you don't want to drag me into swamp, do you?" Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do. I love the Doctor, but sometimes he needs to get put in his place a few times.
Not in this story. I think in this story, Tom is very, very good. I think this is the first time we've seen top of his game Tom since season 14.
Yeah.
Truly the first time. And I love it.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was very well measured, all that he did. And he also has something that I feel like I haven't seen on the show in a long time, and that is always a bright spot to me, and that stays on for the show for a very long time, is when the Doctor speaks with such righteous indignation at an injustice. And when I see that, I just think of 12, and I love it. And it was really exciting to see that. And he had very good reason to, because I will tell you right now, this is a silly, lighthearted serial, but man, when we were getting down to them doing live dissection of a marsh person, I'm like, this shit got serious real quick.
All right, so let's head into part 3, since we're on to the vivisection.
No pun intended.
So part 2 ended with Romana getting bitten by one of the spiders. Part 3, we find Dexter's already taking tissue samples, and the Doctor's already pretty mad at him for that. And that heads into the vivisection later on. Eek.
So there was a part of me at first, they were talking about doing an experiment, and I was like, oh, cool, an experiment. They're actually going to let him do it. And then I was like, yeah, crazy ass people.
Yeah, it's nasty.
It's so bad. So bad.
And for some reason, it makes it worse was the fact that there is deception at the beginning of it. I don't know why that should make it that much worse, but it does.
It really does. I think there's a few things that really kind of show how like batshit crazy things are getting right here. And one of them is not only they're allowing this whole vivisection thing to happen, they then also just let the kids go with zero repercussions, which just seems very at odds to what their society seems to do most of the time. And then, because this is all before we find out that they're just one big continuous line of, generations of evolution, is that the reason why they haven't left is because they don't know how to pilot it.
That's actually, I love that.
So good, but so terrible.
This is why incomplete documentation is a problem. You need full SOPs, guys.
Oh, man.
It was definitely a horror point in the middle of what is an episode that is dealing with serious things, but in a very lighthearted, this is a romp.
Right.
And then all of a sudden to have this vivisection where we're watching, they do the close up on the eyes and how it connects to Romana, and it's all very intense. And then for it to be kind of compared to what the deciders have decided is the big thing they're hiding is that no one knows how to fly the ship. Now, the thing that you're hiding is that you're willing to do vivisections.
And certainly the thing the lead decider is hiding is the fact that they are the Marshmen and they are the spiders.
Yeah, what they're hiding is actually so much darker than what even the deciders think that they're hiding. And I think that incongruity is very apropos for just society at large. I thought it was just a very interesting take on the things that we usually think are the big things are trivial compared to what we're actually doing.
Congruity and apropos in the same sentence. You are bringing class to the show, Diana.
Damn it. My bad. Roll back the tapes. I didn't mean to do that.
And Diana was on point with her short summary of referring to the creature from the Black Lagoon, because when that marshman gets out of that chair, he starts wrecking shit like the creature from the Black Lagoon, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And after the vivisection, the righteous anger from the Doctor, where he says, you three are supposed to be leaders. Tom is at his absolute best here.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely. If we had had more of this, I would have wanted more Tom. As opposed to the last couple of seasons where I've been, okay, I'm ready for Tom to go.
Well, how's it? 7 seasons, 8 seasons now? It's been a long time.
This is his 7th. Yeah.
7th. It's time. End on a high note and then step away.
Yeah.
It's like he put in his 2 weeks notice and was like, I feel a lot better. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Tom, you're leaving. Stop dicking around, mate.
What I found really funny is there was a part of me as I was watching this that the moment that they let it be known that they just didn't know how to fly the ship, I was like, that could have made for an excellent cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. Very different from most cliffhangers, but it just would have been like, yeah, we just ended it on this ridiculous concept. Have fun, guys.
But instead, Ramona's possession goes, not possession, but whatever's going on with her goes full swing. She trashes her room like a rock star and then lets the Marshmen into the Starliner. And I have to say, I think I must have been maybe 8 years old when I first saw this. And, we've talked before on the show about how when I was a kid, body horror really freaks me out. This really freaked me out. Seeing 3 parts in, not really knowing what was going on with her, it really freaked me out. As an adult, I'm watching it and those spiders look terrible and it's a bit more kitschy. But yeah, I didn't know if she was just going to flat out turn into a Marshman.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anyway, part 4.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now we have our search for Romana, and we kind of already went over the exposition there, or excuse me, the reveal of the evolutionary line on the planet. But I find very funny is the discovery of how we can use oxygen to kind of herd them around, I guess, or just like a cat with a spray bottle.
This is where you can tell that Andrew Smith, at the age of 18, he would have been 8 years old when Inferno went out.
Ah.
And that's exactly what they did with the Primords in Inferno with the fire extinguishers, if you cast your thinking back. So he's cherry-picked little things he remembers from watching Doctor Who as a kid and slipped them in. There is a theory, and if I say who posits it, everyone listening would have to drink a shot, so not going to name names. But this is basically the first time that Doctor Who is written by a fan and sets the precedent that goes on till today, where the likes of Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, Chris Chibnall, etc. all grew up watching Doctor Who and slipped little references like that into their own scripts. So to some extent, this is the first of the modern scripts.
Well, out of that list you gave there, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, so that's not...
Yeah, we all know how much you hate Russell T Davies already.
Hey.
Well, over in just, the science corner of my brain, animals that are older lived in a different oxygen content. They would not be able to survive in the oxygen contents that we have today. And so it is one of those loose science ideas that I think Doctor Who plays with well. Is it actually scientifically accurate? No. Is it scientifically accurate-ish? Absolutely. So I always like it when they play with concepts like oxygen concentration. And I thought that this whole story itself, and I think it really ramped up in these last 2 parts, did the science-ish conversations really well, because they used just enough lingo where it counted. Saying that he was looking at a karyotype just made my little biologist brain so happy that all of the stuff that doesn't really work could slip through and it was fine. So I really enjoyed the sciencey aspect of these last 2 episodes. It was real science. It was nice.
And so, I mean, to that point, Diana, I haven't taken a science class since I was 16. As a humanities guy, and the British education system let me do that.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I know. So for me, my science knowledge, I read a little popular science, but I'm not super sciencey even now. But what I do know, this all sounded great. I mean, to your point, it's sciencey words that I've heard.
Romana said, try running a PCR, and I said, you go, girl. That is what he should do.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds good.
It lets you look at DNA bits.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And to me, it gives it legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's close enough so that it's not so outrageous that you're just like, oh, I can't stand when they throw science things together that shouldn't go together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas this one works. I also love sometimes when they do other things that not quite the sciencey. I don't know if anyone you noticed, but the Marshmen seem to speak with their hands in some ways, but sometimes it got a little weird with the hand touching. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Did not.
No, I didn't either.
They must be Italian.
Yes. Now, did everyone else notice that when the doctor told Romana to stay by the TARDIS, that she seemed to be making like cat hissing noises at the Marshmen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That definitely happened.
Yes, that definitely happened. I thought that was very odd.
Where before she'd been clawing at the Doctor, she kind of gets close to the TARDIS and then tries to claw at any of the Marshmen as well who come close. So yeah, do the cat thing of smack the shit out of it.
Yeah, that was an odd one. I was like, where did the cat genetics come from?
It's the missing link. There is actually a fourth stage of evolution that came between Spider and Marshman.
No.
The lesser known Alzarian cat.
No, the cat is Peak.
Okay.
Let's be honest. Cat is Peak.
The next stage.
And I guess the big science question I have is, if there's this much drive in evolution, what's driving it if they don't have any competitors on that planet?
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
Why do they have to adapt so hard? Chill. Your Marshman life seems to be pretty chill. Your spider life seems to be pretty awesome. What's pushing you outside of that?
And how often, did they mention how often Mistfall is?
I think they said about every 50 years.
Oh, okay.
And there was a comment about another planet in the system that would periodically drag Alzarius a little further outside of its orbit, and that's what caused the environmental changes that result in Mistfall.
Right. And it's funny, it's here that we have our reveal of the added element of they always saying that they wanted to go back to where they thought they came from.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it is kind of the same twist. I thought that the twist would be that they never left Pterodon, but they actually, theoretically, they thought that's where they came from. So it is the same twist. They didn't really leave where they came from. They just changed the name.
And so the original Pterodonians that obviously died on the freighter, this almost feels kind of Planet of the Apesy.
Yeah.
To some extent.
And so did all of the Pterodonians die from the crash?
I don't know whether it was the crash or what.
I don't think they were ever real.
No, because of the records on the ship, I think they were. So I think there was a crew from Pterodon on the Starliner. And then at some point they died. Maybe that's what triggered the evolution.
The evolutionary push. I missed that part. Yeah, that would make sense. Well, not from spiders to Marshmen. That still doesn't.
Yeah. It goes from the Marshmen to the humanoids.
I could see that if they've had 40,000 generations. I mean, that's a tough push, but, that's okay. That's not where I'll get technical.
Speaking of things that clearly didn't evolve well, can we talk about how 2 out of 3 of the deciders are complete idiots?
And the newest one, who has no idea what's going on, is the most competent?
Yeah, so as the Marshmen are breaking into their chamber, the other 2 deciders are saying, well, we should just sit here and see what happens. And Logan is busy being like, just evacuate, get out. You would have just sat there and died. What? Idiots.
But again, the thing that bothers me most is that throughout this whole thing, we still really don't get, I don't think, to a good conclusion, because if they're all part of the same evolutionary line, would they not want to study that and maybe become friends with their other evolutionary folks? Why is it so much they're out to kill us, let's not try to find a way to coexist? I don't know. It just seemed very odd to me.
They definitely went hard line on the Marsh children may be nice because they're children, but once they turn into adults, they're rabid killing machines. Which is definitely a pretty based in severe racism kind of a thing.
It's also a flip to theirs because, their kids are terrible. So
yeah, right. But not Adric.
Oh boy. We're going to get so much hate mail from this, Diana. Let's talk about Varsh's death scene because, of course, Adric's brother decides he has to be a hero and he gets the oh-so-typical dragged under closing door death scene, which Star Trek kind of did in First Contact with Data and the Borg, but Data doesn't die.
Spoilers
I don't know, that's just such a done to death trope.
Yeah.
Was it done to death at that point in time?
Probably. All right, so I think we've pretty much covered this at this point.
I was going to say the one thing that we don't know for sure is we don't know what really happened with Adric because it leaves it wide open.
Yeah, my boy's playing hide and seek. You don't know where he is.
Exactly.
Yeah, he leaves the image translator on TARDIS console. We never saw him leave the TARDIS, though.
No, we did not.
I liked the little through line of the image translator and the doctor getting in his feelings about the fact that it was, oh my God, stolen.
Yeah, like the entire TARDIS isn't.
Yeah.
And like the fact that, when he was in his second phase, he loved to steal hats and clothing.
And the third Doctor stole his entire costume from a hospital.
And how many people has he stolen?
Yeah, I mean, the whole show started with him stealing 2 school teachers. Good point, Diana. Oh, amazing.
Don't take what's not yours. Shut up. You said you needed it. Adric provided.
Yep. I do love that as he's leaving, he tells Romana that they asked him to stay on and be a decider.
Yeah.
Right.
I can just imagine him in those comforter clothes with the scarf over the top. Probably a good thing he decided not to. All right, so as we leave, we are officially in E-Space, and the Doctor and Romana can now see that it's green, because that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, and K9 gets fixed.
And do we want to talk about the decision that they made to leave instead of stay?
You mean the Starliner?
Yeah. Oftentimes, the show likes to try to provide more of a happy ending of everybody working together, and they're like, nah, fuck this, we're out of here.
Well, they've spent generations preparing this ship to leave, and the only reason they haven't done it before is because they didn't know how.
Right.
To me, it feels pretty satisfactory that they do leave.
No, they're blowing up in the 3rd level of the atmosphere.
But see, the thing is like, it's kind of unsatisfactory in a way because at least the leaders here, they haven't learned a damn thing.
No.
And I don't mean about how to fly a Starliner. I'm talking about ethics and morality.
There's that. And then they have no idea what life is like anywhere else. They only know what's written in those manuals. So once they get to wherever they're going, if there's another group there, what are they going to do?
Yeah, what happens when they run out of spider melons?
And on top of that, do the deciders tell everyone else about their history?
Oh, they're probably just going to lie. You're right. Yeah, they're just going to lie. The secret's not out. So yeah, you're right. That's exactly what they're going to do.
But then what's they going to tell them about why they don't go to Pterodon?
It's not a problem because if you think you can fly a plane because you've read a manual, we'd have a lot more pilots. We'd have a lot more astronauts. It wouldn't be all... No, you can't just fly a plane because you are in the process of reading the manual for the first time. No, they're gone. That was the thing that hit me was I was like, oh my God, they're going to be dead in 3 hours. We're like leaving them to go explode in deep E-space.
That would have been really funny. Oh my God. That would have been really, really funny. Like the Doctor and Romana are having their conversation after they take off. And in the background viewing screen, you see the ship just like crash into a cliff and explode. That would have been amazing. And they don't even notice it. They just keep talking.
Yeah,
oh my God,
that's,
so
headcanon. That's what happened for me. Yeah, I thought it was the problem is leaving and the environment will stabilize.
Yeah, that's true. Marshmen and marsh spiders for everybody.
And then the cats will come.
Yeah.
And then the cats will come. Yes.
To drive evolution once more.
So, Big Finish did do a sequel to this.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I thought you were making a joke. Oh, God. Oh, boy.
It's called Mistfall. It was actually written by Andrew Smith, who wrote this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, like major spoilers because I kind of want to read it. Does it follow the humanoids or the planet?
It follows the planet with a different set of humanoids coming on a Starliner.
Okay, cute. Okay.
It's been a while since I listened to that one. I do think they are meant to be the descendants.
No, they can't be. They exploded.
There we go.
Let's go.
We've talked this one to death. Our running metrics. I'll explain later. 0.
0.
No quarries, no jelly babies.
Nope.
Any points for the camp count?
No. Unfortunately, no.
This season is significantly less camp than the previous few. Disappointed. All right, let's go and score this. And for the first time, Diana, you get to go first.
Oh, the pressure. So obviously I loved it. I like what Adric brings in the story. I like the story in general. I think it's a romp. It's a fun time. I like the amount of science that's in it. Everything doesn't totally make sense, but honestly, at the end of a Doctor Who episode, should everything make sense? And so I'm giving this, I'm going to give this 7.5 mathematical stars for excellence.
All right. Julie.
Okay. I enjoyed it. Maybe not as much as Diana did. I think there are a few glaring things that are kind of weird about it. There's some kind of weird decisions that were made. Music-wise, there's some weird things going on. It does look really nice. I'll agree with you, Anthony. I think a lot of the visuals are great. Costuming, I mean, I got to see butts for the first time on Doctor Who. I mean, that's pretty great.
You're sounding a lot like Tina Belcher from Bob's Burgers.
But I still enjoyed myself, and I will give this 7 scurrying, but not scurrying spiders out of 10.
Riley, over to you.
Well, I always enjoy originality. This definitely had it. There are some quite good moments in this. I did enjoy the stress and the terror of the vivisection, the Doctor's righteous indignation. I think that Baker and Ward give some really strong performances. It's a little crazy. It's a little wild. But then there's Adric. So I'm going to give this 6 good old-fashioned spider egg-filled river fruits out of 10.
Wow. It's over to me, and I feel like I've been pretty outspoken that I really like this one. I always have. I think Tom really is at his best. I love this idea that there's this society with a very rotten secret at its core that only one person knows about. And while I've complained about the practicalities of that, I do actually really enjoy it. I think the design, as mentioned, is great. Yes, there are a couple of questionable musical choices, but overall, it works well for me. I think Adric actually suits the story very well, particularly as kind of the halfway house between the Outlaws and the Starliner dwellers. He's sort of not quite one and not quite the other, and it makes sense that he would look to leave, and that was foreshadowed very, very early on. So yeah, for me, hugely enjoyed this one. I'm going to give it 8 extremely mediocre deciders out of 10, which gives us a story average of 7 out of 10, which isn't too bad. Certainly better than most stories in season 17. Oy. So with that, we are at the end of the episode. We will be back next time as the legendary Terrance Dicks returns to the show with State of Decay. But in the meantime, thank you so very much for listening, and as always, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Diana Burney, Riley Schreck, Julie Philippek, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Dungeons & Dragons Mistfall, was recorded on Wednesday the 20th of November 2024. If this is your first time listening into the show, all of our previous episodes are available wherever you like to get your podcasts. You can interact with us on Facebook and Instagram at @Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and consider leaving us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember, be careful of the river fruit, particularly if you're afraid of spiders.